Naina Kidwai from the Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, one of the sharpest minds on the finance sector. The finance minister has mentioned privatizing 2 public sector banks. Now, this has been the holy grail which the government has been expected to do but always shy and reluctant to do. Do you think it will finally come through this time round? And if you were advising the finance ministry on which banks to pick, which public sector banks would be on your list, Ms. Kidwai?
So we have to give kudos to the government for taking the bull by the horns, literally and completely, in terms of actually saying it will be 2 public sector banks. I would hope that it will be 2 of the more profitable ones. I would think likely to be amongst the mid-sized ones. I'm not going to speculate on which, but it is a start. And 12 to 14 public sector banks is far too many. Many of us have said repeatedly 5 to 6 public sector banks is what the government should look to. So hopefully doing 2 now is a start to going much further.
But why are you being so cagey? Why won't you step out and say these are the 2 banks that you would like to be disinvested and privatized? If the government were genuine about sending a signal of wanting to get away from running public banks?
So, Rahul, this is not my field to speculate, and I don't want to cause issues in the stock markets and otherwise. But I think it's important to pause to look at the benefit there's going to be across all public sector banks of the formation of the asset management company and the ARC. So we'll see 2 being privatized, yes, but we will see the entire slug of non-performing loans being looked at for moving out into this new ARC and asset management company, which is absolutely the right approach again to enable the sorting out of what we have seen through the RBI report, this whole NPA scenario increasing as the RBI showed to 13.5%, NPAs even 16.5%.
Does the budget to you provide enough clarity on what the government will do with the burgeoning non-performing assets as and when government stimulus is pulled back and these assets and the RBI's exemptions also taken away and these loans start turning into NPAs?
So, Rahul, the way it works is that as the NPAs emerge in the public sector banks, the opportunity to move them into a place where they can see resolution quickly is what is required. I was seeing some statistics where there's a report which says that on average for everything that went into the NCLT, some 220 cases, 440 days is the average it has taken to sort these out. This is far too long. So what I'm hoping we will see here is through a system, whether it's through security receipts or otherwise, these loans move into a place where there are experts that deal with moving them very quickly into monetization.
No, but how do we ensure, Mayor Sharma, that it actually pans out like this? For example, the IBC, the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code of 2016 was set up with exactly the same intent, but then very often in the NCLT we saw, challenges, legal challenges, tariq pe tariq, which is endemic of everything that we try and do in our country.
Well, I think that the problem here is that you need to ensure that there is sufficient capacity and the people who make the decisions feel protected and empowered. Right? The reason that people are so excited about a bad bank is that they believe that decisions that public sector bankers sitting in their own banks were not being able to make about haircuts will be made by the same personnel in a bad bank. And I think we have to be a little careful to recognize here that what we are asking for is a change in the incentives of those bankers themselves. And we have to ensure that that comes out in the construction of this bad bank. I very much fear, as happened with the IBC, that we may not be able to create that kind of capacity for independent thinking and for moving forward and for taking this kind of strong haircuts that an NPA crisis genuinely
No, because
needs.
the moment you take a haircut, there'll be, I don't want to name any leader, but whether it's an opposition leader from the CPIM or the Congress, they'll jump up and they'll allege all kinds of things that deal ho gayi, soot boot ki sarkar, they're favoring their corporate friends. So how does the government then navigate that, take the economically prudent decision, make the haircuts which are imperative, and yet not stumble onto a political landmine, Ms. Kidwai?
So, Rahul, a lot of it has to do with the speed, and I think Mihir is spot on in terms of identifying what is the cast of characters who's going to actually lead this process to make sure it happens quickly, and what is the protection that is provided. It wasn't working when you left it to the banks. And of course, don't forget, they had a vested interest in keeping their balance sheets intact. What we could see here is if you move the asset out quickly enough, the bank could even see 80 to 90% of this money coming back to it through a security receipt or some such structure. It moves into this asset management company, and I prefer to call it that rather than, or into an ARC rather than a bad bank, which, so maybe the ARC is more correct. And through the asset management company approach, where there's experts, and hopefully these experts are not just public sector bankers, that there is a very quick and swift sell down of these assets. You have seen in the steel sector, which of course was very painful and slow in cases, we have seen recoveries of monies up in the 60, 75% levels. And that was despite the painfully slow process. If we can move fast while the patient is still on the operating table and not dead, then we will have the opportunity of recovering this money, which goes back to the banks. So I think just shortening the process will make sure that there aren't too many questions asked, because banks recover not just the principal, but the interest as well. This is absolutely the way to go. And the funding that must come into the ARC, it could be thereafter going into other structures, AIFs, etc. There's a lot of focus on these InvITs and REITs, the investment structures, which will enable funds to flow in from the private sector, from foreign funds, from money and capital that has expertise in dealing with these type of assets, so that we get money in and credit in to the very assets that have been starved of funds historically.
Okay.
I'm very excited by these moves. So believe me, if we can push very positively on this, we will have solved for what will otherwise be a hurricane or a tornado coming our way.
Stay with us. I want to go across to Ajay Shriram, Chairperson and Managing Director of DCM Shriram. Mr. Shriram, what do you make of how imaginative the government's allocations in this budget have been? The priority spending on healthcare, infrastructure. Do you think the finance minister has gone as far as she could to try and ensure that the economy bounces back as quickly as possible?
You know, when I went through the budget, the first point which struck me when she finished was, I think the openness and transparency and acceptance that, okay, our fiscal deficit will be 9.5%. So one is not trying to short circuit that or trying to put the figure across the board to show that we are better, because FRBM Act targets earlier were much, much lower than what's come now. So I think first is the acceptance that, okay, the pandemic has an impact on the economy. We are accepting that. And we are gradually going to bring it back in order, 6.8 next year, and then over the next 3 years, bring it back. So I think that's a positive sign of accepting a situation. Secondly, I think the feel-good factor in this came out, that because of the deficit, the general feel is there'll be tax more. You'll get tax on this and this and this, especially on the people, especially on the upper income level, etc. She did not do that. I think that is also a very positive sign to keep the spirits going, to keep the momentum going, to keep the entire orientation towards investment as the need for raising the economy in India going. So I think that's a great direction also, which I feel is a good thing. The approach towards capex, which is worked on, of disinvestment, of the LIC IPO, of changing the laws where now insurance companies can go up to 74%. I think some of these are positive signs of wanting to move forward and get results. I appreciate this investment has been a challenge because it was not done last year, target was not achieved. But she talked about the same companies again this year and said we are going to look at it specially to see how we achieve.
How seriously would you take the government's announcements on disinvestment, given that all previous targets so far have been unmet, and you've now gone out and announced that you will privatize 2 public sector banks that might see some backlash from the PSB unions as well? So does the government's announcements carry adequate credibility?
I think some of these approaches are important. It's important to move ahead a little more. Yes, a change always brings about some dissonance. That's a given in any situation. But it shows the government's intention and target. And I think it's very possible. These banks is one issue, but there are so many other companies she talked about for disinvestment. by which the government can get income.
Let me ask Subhashkar, you've been in this government, you've been part of the thinking process in the finance ministry in the Modi government. Why is the government unable to deliver on its promises? During the budget, we've seen in the past as well, tall promises being made in disinvestment. Last year, even if you leave it as an exception because of the pandemic, even before that, the government was never able to walk the talk. What holds them back?
See, government's track record in implementation of several welfare schemes is great.
Yes.
Whether it's the...
No, I'm talking specifically about disinvestment, don't dodge.
Now, no, I come to this.
Yes.
So, but on the disinvestment related schemes or some of these policy related kind of things, you have a problem. There is opposition inside the party setup and all.
No, but surely you check with before you make the announcement.
Not necessary. The budget making is not done. You recall that sovereign bonds, you would have checked sometime. Sovereign bonds in decision, or for that matter disinvestment, there was a lot of feedback which came later which said that no, you can't even privatize Air India. But the government stuck to it and said that no, we will go ahead. Unfortunately, the COVID struck, and that brought initially the stock markets to royal and all. But and there is this big problem in the government. You recall the Concor. The Concor, the biggest issue was the pricing of the land or the renting of the land which goes with it. Now, governments have always found it very difficult how to deal with the land when it goes as part of the disinvestment process. It requires that clarity of decision making once that doesn't matter.
If this is where we can't have clarity from a government with the kind of majority that the Modi government does, then when will there ever be clarity? A coalition government can never provide that clarity.
So the consequence is this, it doesn't take place.
So the template is available. What Mr. Garg was saying about Concor, about land dimension. So all governments are stuck on valuation, So the valuation is, and they don't understand enough net present value that the money that you get now is greater than the money you might get, whatever. So Maruti's disinvestment provides a template that you don't disinvest in one shot, then you get a share of the upside of the, when the private guy takes over. So if Concor is, say, sold to Rahul Kanwal builds it up and it goes up, say,
but
50.
you have to promise me that the land is not encroached.
So all of that.
If there are squatters sitting on the land, then I don't want Concor.
So 100%, suppose Rahul takes it to 100% valuation, and the government continues to hold 20 or 30% or 15% of that, then and
when does that happen?
Suzuki, it happened.
So it happened once.
The template has never been repeated.
So it happened once.
It
happened once 30 years ago.
Preceded.
That's what you're telling me.
And that is thanks to Mursole Maran, the one man who made it happen.
So it happened once 30 years ago.
This many times actually come up as an evidence that you have undersold. This scares many people. Right, Balco you sold, later on the prices went up,
Hindustan Zinc
you
Zinc
sold,
is currently
and
still being
they're
debated.
not able to sell the remaining stake in Hindustan Zinc for various reasons. So it's a
Mr.
difficult...
Garg, can you explain to me why the government can't stand up and say, I sold Balco, the price went up, that shows I made the right decision because this is a national asset that is now more productive.
And I didn't sell MTNL, look at how I destroyed value over there.
Absolutely, I entirely agree with you. This is the kind of stand which should be taken by the government very clearly, not being afraid of. But unfortunately, this has not happened.
No, but the one thing, Ajay Shriram, that may have changed, ordinarily, especially after what happened with the Atal Bihari Vajpayee Arun Shourie model, is that governments would be wary, but now we're actually in a very desperate situation. Will that desperation lead to calculations changing?
My feeling is, I think the government realizes the need to raise resources. And the budget is very clear, they're not doing it for more taxes and moving the normal way, which is generally done in all budgets, that we tax बढ़ा दो, ये कर दो, वो कर दो, पैसे और आ जाएंगे. I think they are going to be more serious. They are looking at it more objectively. The schemes of the last 8-10 months where the government has announced support during the pandemic is big money. 20 lakh crores is not small. They need to raise the funds over the next couple of years. So I feel that the seriousness to raise funds through disinvestment, through privatization, through DISCOM changes, which they're talking about, I mean, that's a very major direction, though it's complicated. They tried it before also, it's not been easy. And anything which is given free is misused. Let's be honest, that's human nature. So changing discoms is tough. But getting that under control will have a very major impact in terms of state and central government finances going down the line. So I think the intention is right. The challenge everywhere, as Mr. Garg also rightly mentioned, is implementation. How does one get to an implementation phase in collaboration with states to work on certain policies and within the center to work on others? I have experienced it. We have a business in Rajasthan. 8-10 years ago, the chairman of the Rajasthan State Electricity Board set up a committee to go through all the legal cases which were filed against various companies by the State Electricity Board or by the company. And they came to a resolution where 80% were decisions in favor of the companies, not in RSEB. So I'm saying you have to set up a team and give them the autonomy, make it widespread, give them the autonomy, bring a transparent process so that you get the results and get the money.
So let me ask you this, Mr. Sriram. In the last budget, the finance minister, and even over the last couple of budgets, has been speaking about ensuring that there is less interface with the taxman, that it's easier for corporates and individuals to pay their taxes without being harassed or constantly questioned. So this whole faceless assessment, how do you see it panning out so far?
No, it is working. It is definitely helping where you don't have to go so much. Today, you can get to know everything on the net. I mean, if you take GST positions, the GST situation, one gets messages 10 times a month saying this is the position of your GST under various counts. Similarly, tax authorities. You don't have to go there. Now it's all coming on the net. It's a great direction to move on. And that's the only way you bring in transparency and timely decision making. I think it's a good direction to look at.
Would you agree with that, Sanjeev Ahluwalia? These are actually some announcements which were made in the past that have been carried through with intent, which as the years go by are changing how corporates and individuals interface with government.
I think that is absolutely true. And by the way, from that point of view, this government has been rather good. I think, converting things to digital formats, including the interface between users and the government, is a big thing, is something that the BJP prides itself on. And there's a history to it, I think the first set of land records was originally digitized in Gujarat, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, you're plugging for Karnataka? Okay, all right. Maharashtra and Gujarat in the same kind of club of the progressive state. So there's a history of that, and I think that's a very good thing, because almost 15 years ago, the bank had said that, the World Bank had said that, digital is the way to make the delivery of public services more efficient and less painful. And that's true for all of us, whether you're getting a license, whether you're... on the income tax, though, I must say there's a bit of a problem, that when, for instance, your tax self-assessment is disputed and it becomes totally faceless, whilst I think the opportunities for rent may have decreased.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, but also in genuine cases, a assessee who doesn't have the benefit of a good CA can end up in a very big problem. So those are some of the downsides of artificial intelligence, I guess, and handing stuff over to robots rather than human beings. But overall, yes, I would agree that they've pushed that. And don't forget, I mean, we may soon, I don't know, Garg Sahab hasn't enlightened us, we may soon have a digital currency within the